G'day, Josh here, and I'm here today with one of my good friends, Crawford Miller. Crawford is a rugby coach, CrossFit coach, run CrossFit gyms. Currently works in some sales. I couldn't tell you exactly what he sells, but I'm sure he can tell us. But most of all, he's a great friend of mine and a great dad. And I really want to get to know a bit about his story, a little bit of our background together when he was at College Hill as a CrossFit sort of director of coaching, you might call it. I did a lot of work with him on sort of his coaching game, and so we'll dig into a little bit of that as well. But welcome, Crawford. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you having me.
So let's dig a little bit. I mean, I guess people should get to know us a little bit together.
Yeah,
When did we first meet?
we first met in 2010. No, or was it 2009? I think it was 2009,
2009.
the first time, yeah. At UNCG when you came out to the rugby team to help out our motley crew. Um,
Yep.
and here we are over shoot, almost 15 years later. 15 years later. 16 years
I
later.
know we're old.
Woo!
Yeah. So we met. I was coaching. I came out to help out with UNCG rugby. I was going to school as an adult student. You were a traditional undergrad.
Hmm.
I'm aging myself here. I'm a few years older than you. But then I guess we actually did end up playing together
Yep.
over in Denver for the Glendale Raptors for a few years. That was fun. I got to yell at you a lot.
Oh yeah.
You yelled at me a lot.
That's how our relationship is. We yell at each other a lot, but there's a lot of love in the yelling.
Yeah, exactly. And we you know, I think over the course of time, our relationship started sort of player coach, but also student student, right? So it was
Mm,
kind of a very unusual foundation, I guess, because I came in with, I mean, I was 20, I don't know, 28, 29 at the time, and trying to figure out my way back into school. And you're a traditional undergrad age, and you're crushing college life. Um, Tried to take your foot off with an axe, if I remember correctly.
yes. Yep. Yep. I know you never let me forget that because I had a chance to play for a super rugby team for that weekend, but chose to go
Yeah.
backpacking with a girlfriend at the time. And you're right, I nearly lopped my toe off with a hatchet. Um, so thank you for bringing that up again. I appreciate that.
Good memories. But you went on to do a master's in communication, and then we kind of had a bit of a dream together to potentially open a gym, and you moved out to Denver.
Hmm.
Obviously, that didn't work out as planned, but you did get into coaching at that time. And I guess for me, the first question is, why did you want to get into coaching?
I had that's a question I feel like I have to back up and give a little background on me. I never like I played volleyball in high school. I was always competitive, but never like overbearingly so. Um, and when I was in college and playing rugby, that's what I was passionate about. And, you helped kind of get me into coaching with fitness. And I have always found value in helping other people succeed and do well in what they're pursuing. Whether that's by, supporting them in particular ways, coaching them, giving them advice. But being the oldest of five, I've always had that kind of like caretaker mentality. So that's always stuck with me. And when I, got into coaching and you really helped guide and nurture how I developed as a coach, that passion, just exploded. And even while I was in grad school, I pursued thinking I was like going to go the, master's route, end up becoming a college professor, doing something like that. And that just didn't, I realized I didn't want to do that. And coaching is what I wanted to do. So, when I was out in Colorado and we were pursuing what we were pursuing, trying to open up a gym. And I think one of the poignant things is while we didn't necessarily succeed in that, there was so much growth and things that I learned from my time out there and then being with you, that all of that still sticks with me. And I think it's important because a lot of times people will start something like that or pursue something like that and not seeing it come to life as a failure. and they might just completely give up on that avenue and then do something that might not be conducive or healthy for them. And I think one of the things I've always taken from you, and I think back to my senior season when I broke my pinky, or not my pinky, my ring finger, and I had two pins. I missed my for a finger, miss an entire senior season of rugby after I had dedicated so many hours and so much work in the gym. You really helped put into perspective all that I had accomplished, and that this moment wasn't necessarily a determining factor of what my future would be, but it was an opportunity to realize everything I had accomplished to that point, and to give me confidence to be able to get through that tougher time. And that's when I started coaching rugby more, because I wasn't
Hmm.
playing, so I had that player coach role. And your guidance through all of that has been tantamount. And with the relationship we have to this day, I still describe you as my mentor to people. When they ask about influences in my life, so I know that's a kind of a long-winded answer into getting into coaching, but it's been a journey, and I think that's as I'm getting back to that space now with the UNCG rugby team, I'm realizing that journey is never ending, um,
Hmm.
and connecting with players now is vastly different than what it might have been when you were coming out and helping us out, and forced me to kind of step back and think about and reflect on some of those things that I've learned, to be able to, best support the guys and the team. So I'm grateful for
Yeah.
you. I'm always going to be eternally grateful for you. And I'm, even as you said, working in sales, I work in software sales, in the transportation industry. I'm leveraging a lot of that stuff to this day in what I do and the people I work with.
Yeah, let's go back to your childhood a little bit, and you probably had a lot of coaches growing up. Once I'm sure you focused on volleyball, but there were probably other things. What was something that you enjoyed about the coaches that you enjoyed being around, right? Like, what was something that sort of drew you to those people versus others where you struggled to remember their name? Oh, what was the name of that coach? Oh, it was that,
Mm.
the one. And so we all had these. Were there any coaches in your childhood that sort of really stuck out as almost role models, right?
Yeah, my volleyball coach in high school, Mike Adams, he was um, awesome. He knew how to be serious and kind of no nonsense at the right times, but also make training and the process of preparing for competition really fun. I had a blast all through my high school years playing, and he's someone who I have always kind of uh, thought about in those years. And it's like he was my first like real coach, I would say. I was never really doing organized sports. In my younger years, I was more of that weird emo skateboarding kid, but in high school, got into to organized sport, and I loved it. I loved being that person. And I was 100% the loudest guy on the bench. I was cheering the loudest. I always wanted to support, the boys and the team. And he taught me the value of having fun while working hard. Which is something, my dad has also, instilled a really strong work ethic in me, but, always made it so that you're working smarter, not harder, and being effective with what you do. So, Mike Adams was a big coach, and then I had an AAU volleyball coach. I believe his name was Coach Joe. Um, he was great too. He had a different coaching style than Coach Adams, and his was a little bit more direct. Uh, I'll say a little more old school, and I really appreciated that too. And it was just kind of getting that exposure to those different coaching styles, was really fun for me, and kind of started to open my eyes to, now that I'm thinking back on that, is like, there are different styles and different ways coaches are going to do things that's going to, connect with athletes on all different levels. And I think each one of those coaches did a nice job because despite their styles being different, they both had their capacity to connect with everybody on the team. Um, and we had some success. We were decent, not every great. I'm not the tallest guy in the world, and I played middle my senior year of high school. So let that be an example of how good we were. But we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're maybe what, 5'10"?
Man, that's generous. Thank you. I'm like probably 5'9" on a good day, but let's be honest, like 5'8" and a half.
Listed at 5'12", sorry, 5'11", six
Yep.
foot.
Yep.
Oh dear, yeah. So, and it's interesting that you say that, right? Like, one of the themes that always comes up when we chat about coaching or life in the gym, life on a team, connection is a really big one for you,
Hmm.
and it sounds like that started really young. And I know that was one of the things that made our rugby time at Glendale so special, right? Like we had a coach that really wanted to connect with each of the players, and
Hmm.
I saw you really thrive under that period, right? Coming from a small rugby school, ending up starting a PRP final with guys who went to the World Cup, playing against guys who went to the World Cup, playing against. I think in that first final, you were up against Mose, who became a teammate the next
Hmm.
year. But that's like a legend of rugby in America, right? I think he'd been playing for probably 20 years at that time and been to multiple World Cups. How was that journey for you as a sort of a player to at a smaller school and a smaller environment to playing on essentially what at that time was probably the biggest domestic competition in America?
It was awesome. I mean, that's, the first word that comes to mind. I never really knew what was going to happen pursuing rugby after college. I knew I wanted to try and go as far as I could because of how much I love playing the sport and how much it had given me. Um, so that was, you know, crazy to think about it when you frame it that way now. Thinking back on, who I have played with, and I never got that call up. I never got to strap on the red, white, and blue. That was, definitely the dream for me. But being able to be alongside those guys and playing against guys who have, um, was such an amazing experience. And it helped shape me. You're right. We had a coach who really cared about the players, and not only that, like it fostered a culture where we all cared about each other, um, which led to our success. We didn't win that first championship. I started losing by a point. Gutted. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about you know
Let's not talk about that.
playing in front of 5,000 people, 1 point. And, it's like, wow, all right. But then
Oh,
the
the
next
worst.
the next 2 years, being able to make right and win the championship the next 2 years and learn and grow from that. You have athletes who they'll experience that, and that could be it for them. That could be so much of
Mhm.
being almost there and not quite getting it, and it turns them off. But we had a great culture and a good coach where hey, we washed our hands clean of it. It was the next job for the next season, and we were able to continue on with our success there. So um, I still sometimes can't believe I played at the level I did, but um, I'm grateful I pursued it as high as I could.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty awesome to watch you grow, and it was very different for me to start as your coach and turn into your teammate, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, I was an elder statesman on that team. I had kids and everything. It was a weird disconnect, but um, it was pretty cool to see our relationship sort of change together, right? Like because you are very integral in the positions that we play. A great scrum half helps out the forward pack, right? And
Hmm.
you were that scrum half, and so our relationship changed, right? Like the power dynamic changed. You started calling shots, and I had to listen to them. And still, one of my favorite memories. We both played off the bench in my last game, which was your first championship with Glendale. And I look back, there's a picture of us singing the national anthem
Hmm.
in reserves pennies, and I was just as proud to be standing there alongside you, um, with this opportunity to share the field with you, and watching that sort of that growth curve of a young player who showed potential in his college team, and but then trained really hard, right? And it wasn't luck that got you there. It was sort of persistence and hard work and that sort of thing. And I also saw that express itself in your coaching, right? And so I guess for me, CrossFit, it's a little bit different from coaching rugby, right?
Yeah.
Rugby is a team sport, and
Hmm.
CrossFit is people pay to get fit, look better naked. I think is probably the main reason people do CrossFit. How
Hmm.
did you sort of leverage those sport experiences into your coaching at CrossFit?
One of the things I think, in our relationship of you starting as coach and then us being able to play together that I really took away was even though, I worked my butt off and didn't necessarily make it to where I wanted to playing for the national team, you helped instill in me that understanding and the value of that work and how that, you know, can contribute to success not only on the field but off the field. And to your point, talking about that picture, I, still look at that picture and other pictures from when we play, and I am so proud of that time. And I think you instilled in me on the coaching side how to connect with people to make them feel good about their role, no matter what that was on the team, which is such a
Hmm.
hard thing as a coach, right? Especially like thinking about a rugby team. You have your starters, you have your reserves, and naturally everybody wants to start. They want to be that star player. And not getting that and like starting in a final the first year, then having to be back up with Mose coming over, was a shift. And I am grateful that I had the, you know, coaching experience with you and then being a teammate to realize, hey, this role is just as vital to our success in winning a championship as it is as Mose's role starting. So I tried to take that kind of mindset into my coaching in the CrossFit space of, you know, you have all different um, what's the word I'm looking for? Experience levels or comfort levels,
Hmm.
when someone walks into a gym. And when someone goes to a gym, whether they want to admit it or not, it is a 100% selfish and rightfully so decision to go work
Hmm.
out and fitness. You need to do that for yourself first and foremost because
Yep.
we all wear multiple different hats, whether that's athlete, coach, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever. And our ability to show up the best in those different roles starts with our ability to take care of ourselves. And I think going to the gym and doing that is a hugely selfish thing. So, I helped people realize, or I would try to and connect, help people realize like you're here for you. Um,
Hmm.
so that when I had those athletes in a CrossFit space, obviously a college athlete comes in, they've been doing strength and conditioning for a while. That's one thing as a coach to be able to handle. They're not going to necessarily need as much, um, caretaking or connection or my time. Whereas the person who's coming in, the last time they did a squat was 10 years ago, uh, you know, they're going to need some more TLC from me. But
Yep.
I put a lot of value in not only being able to help the different types of skill levels in the CrossFit space, but how do I get these people to connect with one another as well? Um, so while yes, it is a selfish thing to go to the gym in that class setting, I try to create that team, aspect because I think we are all more successful when we have the confidence and ability to lean on others. We live in a society that is very individualistic and, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make the most of what you can do with what you can control. And I definitely agree to that to a certain point, but it's not realistic. We're social animals and we need one another. So, I, took that from you and being, coached by you and being your teammate and apply that in, how I interacted and connected with people in the CrossFit space.
Yeah. What were some of the ways, right, like that you helped them create that connection in class? Because CrossFit classes, um, you know, sometimes you get that crew, right? Early mornings tends to be a crew
Hmm.
because they're all getting up at 5 a.m. or whatever ridiculous time you all get up to work out at. And you are an early morning workouter, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how anyone moves functionally at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. It's ridiculous to me. So you have that crew, but then you also have like the evening classes, which tend to like, oh, I come to a 5 o'clock or a 6 o'clock, and I'm not quite consistent, right? And
Hmm.
so there's a bit of variability. What were some of the things that you did to help them connect in that sort of space?
Um, that's such a really good point because you're so true. You have your 5 a.m., your early morning classes, and then it's like you think about where people are coming from. They're getting ready for their day there. At the end of the day, you have no idea where someone's coming from. They could have had a great day at work. They could have had a shitty day, and you could just say hi to them, and that could be the straw that broke the camel's back, and they might start crying. You know, um, So in that afternoon space, which is where I first started coaching, always try to bring us together by doing some fun activity in the warm up.
Hmm.
My someone coming to a CrossFit class, our focus is movement. So I always wanted to make movement fun. And, whether that be doing a warm up game, playing the pizza game with ab mats. I always like to pose a question at the beginning of class. And one of my favorite questions is, I love this question. I don't know why, I just love it. If you could pick any vehicle to be your vehicle from any movie, show, real car, flycraft, whatever, what would that be? And questions like that, just getting different answers. People laughing, people smiling. I always try to make it a lighthearted environment. Um, to get them comfortable before jumping into the meat and potatoes of movement and what we were there for that day.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. Because I think you're right, that fun, that smile on someone's face, that you know, it just releases you to move right a little more freely. And you know, you always walk into the gym at a CrossFit and you're like, oh, I hate that movement or I hate that move. There's all, even if you've been doing it for a really long time, right? There's always, you walk into that gym, or the one day you walk into that gym, you're like, this workout was made for me, right?
Yep.
Um, and you've got all those different characters all coalescing, and then you've got the person who's super shy about their body, and then there's the person who has too little clothes on, and you've got to balance all of those things and show care for all of them. And as someone who's seen you coach a lot, I think you do that really well, and you do it with a lot of fun. But you're also really detail oriented, so that's an interesting sort of perspective, right? Like
Mm.
you bring everyone together and you have fun, but you're not afraid to be like, you're moving poorly. I need you to change. How do you balance that sort of almost good cop, bad cop in the same coach? Like, what do you do to sort of be able to maintain that sort of perspective?
My thought when I'm coaching in the gym is I want to give every single person one thing that they can walk away with from class. It doesn't matter if it's the least experienced all the way to the most experienced person in class. It's my own personal goal or objective for me as a coach in that class to touch everyone. And, sometimes that's like, giving an actual physical cue and adjusting movement, or having a conversation with them, about what is working well with their mechanics. So sometimes it would be making corrections, other times it would be reinforcing good habits. But for me, I thought it was important that, in that space, these individuals are coming to the gym because they want to move, they want to be healthy, and I see that role of the coach as, well, I have to help kind of bridge that gap for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my role was being able to help them with movement, or telling them what they're doing well with movement. So that was always my goal. And names, I was always using people's names. It's not often that, in your day to day where you operate, if you operate with the same people day in and day out, you might not use their name as much. There's a
Mm-hmm.
familiarity when you see one another, and I think there's a lot to be said when you hear your name. We hear our name called, it triggers something in us, causes us to pay attention a little bit more. So for me, that was kind of like a little, trick. I'd always say the person's name first, just make sure they know I'm talking to them and that they're listening, but to kind of flip that switch for them. Oh, I heard my name. I need to focus on what this person's saying to me right now. So that would be, kind of my method of helping people feel good about themselves in that space, and feel good about me as their coach.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. And I guess you probably do that in sort of team sport settings as well, right? Like you try and connect with every individual as an individual.
Oh yeah, I mean, now with the guys, it's every time after practice, trying to just chat with them a little bit, and that personal connection, asking about stuff outside of sport. Um, and I would do that in the CrossFit space too. I was always asking people, how was your day? One of those other questions to start a class with, starting with your high and your low. And I actually use that um, with the rugby team. That's how we end practice while we're stretching. We'll share our high and low for the day, And it's kind of cool because sometimes you'll get stuff that's not sport related at all. And it's nice seeing how their comfort level doing that has exponentially gotten higher since starting that at the beginning of the season this year. And it's been really fun because to me, that's showing buy-in in what we're trying to create.
Yeah, and I think when building a culture, there's this teaching aspect of it, right? And I think as a coach, you need to be really comfortable with something not working for a period of time. And I think with questions of the day and, you know, also other things that are going on, I think it's really important that coaches sort of stick to what they believe in, right? And it sounds like you believe in this connection piece of it.
Hmm.
How long did it take for them to sort of really start buying into sharing, a few more things about themselves with the rugby team?
It took, I will say with the boys, it's taken a little longer. And granted, I'm only able to get out 1 day a week for the 3 days of training that they have. Um, but I would say, after the first 4 weeks of this semester. And what really was? It's that first tournament. We had that first tournament where, for some of them, it was their first run out on a pitch. Never have ever played rugby before. And I was in there and after every match breaking things down and trying to go up to folks. And I always want to ask the question to generate thinking on their side of what
Mm,
they are recognizing as what they did well or what are areas they think they need to improve on because we as coaches can go ahead and see that and tell someone this is what you've done wrong, this is what you need to do right, but that could be in one ear out the other if they're not listening or invested in what you're saying. So that's why for me, and I've taken this from you 100%, is the power of questions. And that can frustrate people, and that's not an easy process by any means. I'm not trying to say this is something you do and it's automatic and be like that. I've asked questions and just had blank stares, and I've felt like I'm not doing a good job. Um, but to your point, I have to be okay knowing not everything I try as a coach is going to work. And
hmm
just like when I was a player, not everything I'm going to try is going to work. I might try and do certain drills or pursue a path of fitness to increase one aspect of my game. And sometimes that's worked, sometimes it hasn't. So that, as a player, I really learned the importance of hard work and knowing that you're not always going to get it right the first time. You have to be okay with failing um, and things not working out. So, I knew in that first tournament going into it with an inexperienced team, my expectation wasn't that we were going to win it. My goal was I wanted them to feel good about playing and having some structure and starting but slowly and surely building their confidence. Um,
hmm
which in that first tournament showed because they got better every single game. And in my asking them that, what they felt they did well and what they did wrong, they were able to improve on little things. And, like as an example, defensive line. We had, one game where I had a kid who was just, he kept shooting, he kept shooting, he kept shooting. And it just, a gap was exposed and a lot of tries were scored in those gaps. And I talked to him about that. And I, loved his, you have someone who's got that fire and mindset of wanting to go get a tackle. I said, hey, you've got six other guys on the field with you. I want your goal to be to bring one person on either side with you if you go do that to just help maintain the line. And I literally in the next game watched him do that. He literally he looked to him, talked to his teammate to the right, talked to his teammate to the left, and then was like, all right, on this kickoff, we're going to go up together. And it was really for me that's a hugely rewarding thing, right? Because it's showing their investment and understanding on what we're trying to do as coaches to help elevate their game and grow so that they can be successful and get to that point where yeah, anytime we step onto the pitch our expectation is that we want to win. um, Sorry, I got long-winded and made maybe a little bit off track there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's fun to see the energy, right? The energy that comes with coaching, right?
Mm,
There's this, I don't know, I find it very fulfilling to coach. It fills my bucket, and I think that sort of leads me to this next question. I ask it of everyone: what is the joy you find in coaching? And I think going back to your point, you said when someone walks into the gym for their fitness, they're doing it selfishly. And I think that if we want to do something repeatedly over and over, and coaching is something that a lot of people will say, oh, I'm passionate about the sport or I'm passionate about this group of people. But passion only gets you so far. And it's my belief that joy fills the tank, right? And
Hmm.
those moments of joy fill you up. And I guess for you, maybe the joy is different coaching CrossFit to coaching rugby and other areas. But what is the joy you get that fills your bucket from coaching?
Um, Seeing someone do something they didn't think they could do, and that aha or light bulb moment kind of go off for them. That's when I know I've done it. I've helped achieve, supporting this person to instill a confidence in them they might not have realized that was there,
Mm,
that they can take, and whether that's on the rugby field or whether that's in the gym, apply to work toward getting the results that they want. And then even further than that, applying that confidence to other aspects of their life. You know, um, Life is not easy. Life is, hard and harder for some than others. But I think we've all got the capacity to be able to navigate things in our lives. And it's not always on our own. We need to realize when we need the support of others. But being able to give people that confidence, through coaching to do those things they didn't think they could do, is huge. That's like the biggest thing that fills my bucket when it comes to coaching.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And I know in sport in rugby, right? Like that looks very different for each individual. So it reinforces that individual connection that you have with everyone
Hmm.
because where they see success and what you've been working on them with is going to be very different for each individual. And I think the same thing is in the CrossFit space. I remember seeing someone do a full air squat, right? And being able to get their hips below parallel. That was like one of my best moments, right? At CrossFit Greensboro. Like, they'd been squatting to a box. Well, they'd started squatting to a tire and it got lower and lower. And as they were starting to get fitter, right?
Hmm.
And the day they did a full air squat unassisted, it was like, oh man, the smile on that individual's face was incredible. And I think as coaches, being able to see individual growth is so powerful to get you coming back day after day after day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I think for us as coaches, what, you know, charges our batteries, fills our bucket up is seeing that impact we make on others. And I mean, that's what we do is, what you choose to do as a coach. You choose to, take your time, your energy, and pour that into others, um, to help them achieve, certain things. And that's not always easy. Like, you know, we talk about all of the positives about it, but there are really difficult moments, when it comes to
Yeah.
coaching. And there are days where it feels like, it just didn't connect. Um, but the important thing in those moments is those are the opportunities for us. We tell things people or we coach people with certain things. We sometimes need to realize we have to live those things ourselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that the mirror is often the harshest critic, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes we only see the criticism, and we need to remember the messages we've been sending out as well. And what's one message that you have to hear that you tell everyone else? What is that message?
Oh man, um, just oh man, that's such a good question because I find myself in a space in my life, with 202 not being in the best routine ever. What I think I continuously tell myself that I know I tell others is, uh, do one thing better, one little thing, and try to build on that. Um, whether that's if I'm having a rough night with the kids and I'm not getting a lot of sleep and going to be able to get up early. Maybe it's, and we've talked about this in the whole tiny habits thing, just put my clothes out, the intention to go work
Hmm.
out. And if I do that, that in and of itself is success. And maybe I don't get up and maybe I choose to sleep in, or I need to get that sleep in so I'm able to function for work. And I could say to myself, hey, I got the clothes out, I got everything set. let me see if I can do one more thing, at build on that,
Hmm.
you know. Um, so that's one thing I find myself in a space currently actively doing quite a bit. And that for the rugby team, I also specifically tell them, having a lot of guys who are inexperienced or maybe not as athletic as some of the other guys on the team, I tell them your focus is just to be 1% better, a fraction, a small little piece. And to not only be that 1% better, but to have that awareness of the 1%. Because you could say
Yeah.
that and people, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's a whole different thing when they take that and they focus on what that 1% is. And I'm always having conversations. I tell my players or athletes, when I'm coaching you and I'm giving you a cue, tell me how it feels for you. If something doesn't feel right, I don't want to continue to try and push something on you that's not going to work. That's my job as the coach, is to help adjust and figure out what is going to work. Um,
Yeah.
and it's especially with the kids, they're a little bit younger, they're not as open or speak up as much. And I didn't really realize it. And this is, could be a whole nother podcast. Uh, uh, the impact COVID had on all of them, because they were in high school,
Hmm.
and started their
Hmm.
earlier part of their college career at the height of COVID. So I've had some of those players. I've like kind of beaten my head against the wall. Why am I struggling to get through this person? But then I also have to step back, and their experience of going through adolescence into college way different than mine. So I had to take that step back and think, well, now I've got to meet them where they're at,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm still able to do things and leverage strategies I have as a coach. I just need to now make those small little tweaks so that I'm able to connect with that person. Or more importantly, build that trust so that they feel confident enough to come to me and communicate with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very different, and I think every generation, as you get older, you have a new generation of athletes, and the problems change. But this one, I think, is going to be a long lasting one across a lot of generations of
Oh,
athletes,
yeah.
right? And it's I'm curious because my kids were in sort of elementary school and middle school going
Mhm.
through it, and I wonder how that's going to impact their college sort of life, right? How
Yeah.
are they going to be as young adults as opposed to adolescents? And um, we've got another probably 12 to, and then they're going to parent, right? And that's also going to be something that affects a future generation because they won't have experienced some of the things that we take for granted in our childhood. And I think as coaches, it's really difficult, but it's really important to see them as they are, not as you expect them to be. And I
Mhm.
think that's
Mhm.
kind of what you're doing in this situation.
Yeah. No, that's a very good way of putting that. Because uh, as coaches or as parents, we want certain things, or we have this picture in our head of our expectations of what it should be. Um, and when we hold on to those and try to force them, I think that's where I've, as a coach, have experienced the most pushback from athletes. And I know at some point, as a dad, I'm gonna experience that pushback from my kids. That's an inevitability. Um, and I have always put a lot of value of being able to step back in those moments. And that's what I've learned from you, is being able to adapt to the different types of people you're going to encounter. For me, having watched you coach, that has always been something I think that you have an innate ability to do, regardless of where someone's coming from, whatever's happened in their day. You have the ability to, within 5 minutes, communicate with someone and almost bring a calm to them, where it gives them the ability or confidence to perform in the gym, or to be able to go out onto the pitch and fulfill their role or do their job really well. So that's something that has always stuck with me and what I try to do, and a part of that process. And you've done it with me. I know as an athlete, I've had those moments where I've wanted to just stare you in the face and say "f off, buddy." Like I'm done. I'm done. You know,
You might have actually said it. You might have told me to fuck off before. I'm
I
pretty
have.
sure you
I 100% have.
have.
But I am grateful for that because you gave me the space to have those feelings and those emotions and kind of backed off. But then we talked about it afterwards and what that said about
Yeah,
performance or how that impacted performance. Um, and as a coach and being successful with whatever type of culture you're trying to create, I think that's a huge key to it. It is the trust to know that you think we have an expectation, especially in how much people, dedicate time into social media of, life being this particular way or it being easy in certain aspects of it easier that should feel good all of the time. And I think our most meaningful relationships are those that are the ones that don't feel good all of the time.
yeah,
That are in fact, create moments of uneasiness or friction, or vulnerability. And I have been able to be a successful coach because I can, you know, give my players or athletes the space to be vulnerable. Um,
yeah.
and I've, you know, kids in college, you remember stuff happens, life happens. And
So much.
you've got to meet someone with where they're at and give them the space to feel comfortable enough to express themselves if they want to. Um, and if not more importantly, or just as important, comfortable enough to say, "Hey, now's not the time," you
Yeah,
know, because I think a lot of times people will just sit and listen or let you coach and talk, but you're not getting through it all because they have something else going on up here. Um,
hmm,
so that's something I really try to keep top of mind while I am coaching and helping to get people where they want to be.
yeah, yeah. And I guess it kind of leads me to another little bit here, and something that I think all coaches go through. What's a time when you've sort of, and we both like Ryan Holiday, right? Like in Stoicism, when we read a lot of his books, and the best way to explain it is the obstacle is the way. What's a time when you've had to go through an obstacle as a coach,
Mm,
and sort of, you know, it makes you feel terrible. There are times when as coaches we feel terrible. There are decisions we have to make that they're not fun decisions. What's a time where you've had to work through an obstacle, you've come out the other side, and it's only in hindsight that you've realized how much stronger you became?
that's a really good question. You want a rugby answer, or would you like a CrossFit answer on that?
Whichever one, whichever way you want to go.
you know, I'd probably have to go the rugby route because, getting back to it and coaching a younger group, um, I want to say it was our first tournament, and I've got a player who's really athletic, just a lot of raw talent and awesome attitude as well. Like lifts the energy up around others. And I had a moment where his tackling, he kept putting his head on the wrong side, and I was very adamant and I thought being very clear about what he needed to do. And I will say, English is his second language, and I don't.
Mm,
He understands English just fine, but I think the way I went about explaining that wasn't necessarily clicking. And in the the heat of a tournament and in between matches, you've got a lot going on, and I was trying to address that with him, and first and foremost for him to be safe. That's the thing I have at the top of the list for whether it's CrossFit or rugby, safety first and foremost. Um, Second match, literally minute and a half in, makes the tackle, concussed, he's done for the day. And just I felt so guilty. I felt responsible for that. Um, but I also had to recognize here was a moment where I tried to explain to him how he needed to tackle and how he needed to go at something. And I didn't necessarily connect with him or get that through. And then we had a poor outcome in the next match, and it hurt because you put a lot of value on those players that are able to lift the energy level. And he went into this tackle full tilt, and he's a big guy, so he can control the contact pretty well. He just the technique wasn't there, and put his head in front of a knee, and yeah, that was it for the rest of the day for him, and he was, I mean, tears streaming down. He felt like he had let everybody down. So that's where, as a coach, I found myself in a position I felt so bad about what had happened and my, what felt like a failure, coaching failure on my end of communicating effective tackle technique, to now I also have this guy who he's crying. He's just, and he's like, I feel so bad. I'm letting the team down. And it's like, I have to, okay, I need to support him in another way right now. That we'll get to the tackling piece of it. I want them to realize he can still make an impact with his energy level and how he supports the guys throughout the rest of the day, and to see everybody else recognize his frustration and rally around him and say, "Hey, you're not letting us down." That was a really good feeling, So while
Mhm.
yes, I felt like a failure in the tackle technique part, I felt like, well, we have this camaraderie enough to where this player has, seven people around him saying, "We got you. Don't worry, it's going to be
Yeah,
okay." And he was able to, he was next to me the entire rest of the day, because I wanted him to say, "Hey, I'm going to explain things," and I had him watch tackles and asked him, and it's like, okay, I can turn this negative into a positive. So that was like, for me, especially getting back to coaching rugby this year, was like, I remember how much my heart sunk and I felt horrible. But it's, as a coach, you're going to have those moments, and sometimes in the heat of competition, you have to be able to roll with the punches and keep moving forward and adapt. So thinking about it's like that. All right, I just need to be 1% better, um, and that,
yeah,
negative kind of turned into a positive at the end of the day.
yeah, and probably the strength of everything you've done leading up to it allowed the boys to get around and support the player, right? And
Hmm.
so there's that strength in doing the pre-work. So when you get in that heat of the moment, you can act as a human, and I
Hmm.
think that's what you did when you recognized my emotions and his emotions, which one is more important? You prioritize his emotion, and then you would have to deal with your emotion later. And that compartmentalization is something that I hear in your story that you might not say to yourself, but I want you to remember it as well, because that really is what we do as coaches. There are times where we minimize what we're feeling to exaggerate what our athlete is feeling, and there are other times where what I'm feeling has to be more exaggerated than what the athlete feels. And it seems like you did a really good job of that in this situation.
Thank you. And I think you put a good point in saying compartmentalizing that, because I took that, and then obviously that dictated what we did in practice the upcoming week, and the amount of
Mm-hmm.
emphasis we put on safety and the contact, whether that's open field tackle, the breakdown, set piece, whatever it may be. Um, and that made a direct impact, right? That not only helped this one player improve, that helped our whole team improve, because we're all putting an emphasis on our ability to make sure we're safe in the tackle, and then on top of that, building to the point where not only do we want to be safe, we want to be dominant, um,
Yeah.
to control it and play the game the way that we want to play it. So that was like, you know I will write down my notes for the week on what, just a light outline, and that, I took those emotions of what I was feeling when this player got injured and concussed, and then after the fact, prepping for my week, on Sunday and Monday, taking those and then using them as fuel to put together a plan that's going to help, not only that player but the whole team.
Yeah. What about a CrossFit situation? And I know we're getting to our time, so I'm going to keep there. But what about a time where it's a little bit different, right? Like in a CrossFit situation, just so people know, you ran a team of coaches, right? It wasn't just you coaching; you were working for the gym owner,
Hmm.
and then you had a team of coaches working underneath you. Were there any times where you know you had that interaction and you had to work through an obstacle and get to that good result with that group?
Yeah, the obviously I bring a certain energy level, that is, some would describe as high, and high, not that I am high, but a high energy
No,
level to class. And I'm going to back step a little bit back, because when I first started that role, I almost had this expectation. I wanted to make all of these coaches like me. And that's kind of
Hmm.
some of the guidance I got from, a gym owner. Just help them be like you. And I think there is a part of that is, I took that too literal and was trying to,
Mm.
say, hey, this is how you guys need to coach class versus, hey, let's think about what your strengths are. Where are the opportunities in your coaching game? Um, and we had a coach who extremely high level college athlete, track and field, and to this day, just an absolute specimen of a human. Um, and I remember providing feedback to him initially, on coaching class and some things that he could do to try and work on making that connection more. And I remember while giving that feedback, just getting that stare of like, no, you know, like just not gonna sit well with them, or that wasn't what they needed to hear or wanted to hear in that moment.
Hmm.
So that was I realized for me an opportunity to say, okay, I have to meet these people where they're at in how they are coaching our class. And I think that lent to conversations around what we wanted to achieve as a whole as a coaching group. So
Mm.
trying to create more buy-in from them, because in that role, when you can be coaching coaches, uh, you can come from a space of authority, or feel like you're coming from a space of authority, like, this is my role, I'm in charge of all of you. And while, yes, I might have certain amount of experience or certain things that I do well, we as a group are providing a service to the people that come into the gym. So what do we want, regardless of who's coaching, people to say about the coaching at our gym? And that led to some really good conversations collectively, where I realized in that space, like, it was more important to have those types of conversations more often than the necessarily one-on-one, because I found our
Mm.
conversations in those group settings helped people feel more comfortable and sparked, light bulb or aha moments for others, just the way someone might explain something or what they've experienced in a class with an athlete could lend directly to what someone else experiences if their athletes come at completely different times of the day. Um, so that was and that was hard. That took time. That took me like a
Yeah.
solid 2 months to kind of work through and get down. Like, okay, I've got to adjust this so that we can, all be in a good space.
Yeah. And what grew out of that? What skill set for you would you be like, oh, this is what I've taken forward in my life for having that experience?
For me, it was having a conversation first on what the expectations are of that individual when they're performing their job as a coach. I got to understand where they're coming from before I can start to talk about where we want to go.
Mm.
Because if he's coming from or she's coming from a certain place with an expectation to go here, if that doesn't jive with our overall goal of helping people move better and be healthy, um, then we have to make some adjustments on that. And that was the biggest thing, was realizing the lack of immediacy, is a challenge and is not always going to be there. And I have to be okay with the slower pace of things sometimes. Um,
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
yeah, you know me. So that is something, I've taken, and I still to this day, even in my professional life, and my coworkers, I know I have to slow down. I personally can see a problem or see an issue, and in my head, I feel like I know the answer, and I just want to give it, and then that's it, and let's move on to the next thing. Right? Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep growing. Let's keep growing. Let's keep growing. Not realistic, like
Hmm.
a tree, to use the analogy of, a little earth analogy. A tree is yes, it's going to continue to grow, but there could be moments in its growth where it could get struck by lightning, and lose a limb. It could have some type of disease or insects, eat away at it in that process of it continuing to grow. And you just have to realize that that growth, isn't always going to happen at the rate that you might want it to happen, and that it's important to take steps back and give it the space to happen at the pace it needs to happen, um, so that you can, you know, ideally get to a spot with a coach that they have a confidence in themselves that they know no matter when they go to a class, no matter how they're feeling and whatever else is going on in their life, they can compartmentalize and be able to provide the coaching that the individuals need in that moment.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this in the past, but I think with coaching, it's really important that we perform in our arena. And our arena is when we're in front of the athletes.
Yes.
And I think that that is something that I think some coaches don't always realize this. And I see coaching more like a performance art. And my stage
Mm-hmm.
is when I step in front of the athletes. And sometimes you might be feeling crap, but once I'm on stage, now I'm performing, and this is the performance I give. And I think that's what you're talking about. Sometimes, no matter how they're feeling, they turn up. They're a great coach, right? And there's that consistency to the service at a CrossFit or the culture that they build with the team.
Yeah. And it's it's never ending, the process of learning and growing as a coach, I feel like, we're talking it in one capacity. We think about the individual of the coach, and what their job is, but there are also other jobs that that coach might have depending on the level that they're at. You're a good example of having coached, at Stanford. And, not only are you beholden to your players, but then you have a whole nother group or the administrative aspect of it or fundraising. And I'm finding that out myself now, working on
Yep.
fundraising for the team, that you're going to be pulled in different directions by different people for different things that become important part of the process because we need resources to operate.
Yep.
So when we need to go to others for those resources, those individuals might have expectations about the resources they're providing or what, kind of uh, what they'll get back for investing that. So I think that's a whole nother, that could be a whole nother topic of, we as coaches, what do we do then, where we not only have the
Hmm.
responsibility to our players but the responsibilities to other. And just thinking about that right now, it's making me think about all the tournaments we've had so far this season. A bunch of parents have come out, and I have a responsibility to my players, but I also have a responsibility to their parents to keep their kids safe, and I want them to have fun. I don't want, someone's parent coming up to me saying, Johnny's miserable. He hates life right now. What is going on? you know and I haven't had that experience, thank goodness. They've all been really supportive, but I think it does speak to the fact, as a coach you can be pulled in so many different ways. So what do we do as coaches to make sure we're in you know our at our best to provide the best coaching possible to others? Because you and I have both had days where, and I learned this from you, and this is probably what I would put in my top five, probably top three takeaways from you, is it's okay to be vulnerable with your players or with your athletes. And too often, I think coaches come from that space of power or needing to put on a facade of, nothing's wrong. We're focusing on this. Everything's okay. And that's not the case. I've 100% told classes in the CrossFit space or told my players, I have had a bad day. My mindset is not the most positive right now. I'm going to do my best to, move forward here and focus on what we need to get done. But if I'm lacking a little bit, I just want you to know where that's coming from, because I don't want anybody to internalize that and put that on themselves. And
Hmm.
some of my most memorable and best days coaching have been those days where I've been open and honest about my vulnerability. 100%.
Yeah, it's pretty special when people pick you up, right? You give
Hmm.
people an opportunity to pick you up, and they pick you up, and then you keep moving forward together.
Yeah, very powerful.
So it is. Anyway, coming to the end of our time, I've got three questions for you. Just
All right.
three quick questions. So first, who was an athlete who inspired you growing up?
Oh, Jerry Rice. Yeah, I mean, at a young age, like I loved Jerry Rice. I was just, and I don't know if it was the color of the 49ers at the time, the gold helmets and the red, but I just loved watching him play and his ability. I mean, he would catch anything and everything. And then as I got older, and got into, being a competitive person myself. Um, I would say in the college space, from an athlete that I kind of looked up to, playing scrum half, Aaron Carter for the All Blacks, being a smaller guy, smaller. I know I'm a lot smaller than that guy. Um, just his ability to be accurate and his work ethic, I used YouTube as a big resource, so I would always watch a lot of his passing instructional videos, and just his attitude toward things I liked a lot.
Yeah. And the second question is your favorite sporting memory.
Oh man. Uh, my favorite sporting memory is probably winning that first championship with you. Um, we've known each other a long time, and having you as a coach and then being able to play with you was some of, the best memories in my life. And, standing there alongside you afterwards, getting our medals, put around our necks together, and hanging out with your kids afterwards is, you know,
Them getting sprayed with champagne by accident, that
yep.
they still bring it up to this day.
It's that really sticks with me. And I always get goosebumps when I see that picture of us, singing the national anthem, because that was always something that, we both, I think, part of that process was, really fulfilling for us. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And the last one, um, and it kind of goes into your dream car, right? Like, if you could at any time attend any sort of sporting event, athletic arena, whatever it happens to be, over the course of history, what would it be?
So I could go back in time and see it.
Oh yeah, you have to go back in time. We can't future look, right? This
Oh,
is only a
oh,
time travel
oh,
that goes
oh,
backwards.
all right. Oh God, this is a great question. If I could go back in time and see any sporting event, I'd probably go to the '04 or 2000 Olympics.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, as a kid, like going to the Olympics is like it's a huge dream of mine. But I just remember being glued to the TV, each one of those, and just watching every sport possible. Um, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, either the Sydney or the Greece Olympics, the Athens
Athens.
Olympics. Yeah,
Yeah. There you go. Well, that's it. Crawford, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I can't wait to catch up with you in person, and maybe we'll do round two in the future.
yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to more videos that you put out like this, and you've always got me. You've always got me. I'll always come on and yap, and I appreciate you, buddy.
Sweet as.